G'day everyone, Prep Aussie here. I hope you're all well in whatever part of the world you're watching this video. Today is Saturday, the 6th of October, and the time here is 09:15 Australian Eastern Standard Time. Well folks, this is Weekly News Wrap-Up number 4. Lots to go through, and I'll try and be as quick and as brief as possible. Kavanaugh. Yes, he will get, well, it looks like, he will be approved. Is that the word? Terminology? And then the shit's going to hit the fan. Apparently. Who knows? I actually don't see the point in why everyone keeps saying that. But what's the difference between there and now? What? Trump needs one more bloke in the Supreme Court to do everything? I don't get it. He's the President of the United States. He can actually tell the army to do whatever he wants. Within reason, I guess. So yeah, I don't get that side of it. The economies of the world. Actually, hang on, let me go back one step. Out of that whole Kavanaugh process, if anybody around the world, and if you're watching this, if any of you thought that you weren't too sure how fractured the US is, then this has proven to you that it's a lot worse than you think it is. I'm going to make a bold prediction here. Kavanaugh is going to get approved. Within the first week of Kavanaugh being approved, there is going to be some form of civil unrest. They have nothing left now. They have to do something. And obviously that is civil unrest. Obviously, pay some people, push the sheep all that way, make them do something. And then, of course, whatever Trump does, whether he sits back and does nothing, or whether he actually pushes it forward and absolutely tear asses into these people, then, either way, he's on a downer. He's on a loser. So, it's torrid times, folks. Very torrid times. These guys they're going to go for broke. They've got nothing to lose. Nothing at all. Think about that. You're backed into a corner. If you've ever done boxing, the only way to get out of a corner, if someone's pummeling you, is to strike back. Strategically, like it's in boxing terminology, you've got to crouch, get into a crouch and pick your mark. But sometimes the best way to get out of the corner is to come out, all guns blazing. For someone who's been there, done that in the corner, yeah, that's what I used to do, and it worked for me every time. And try and take your opponent off guard. It's as simple as that. Right, economies. Look, if you're still in the camp of, yeah, well, she might be okay. Yeah, well, blah, blah, blah. One, you're a delusional fool. And two, you're a delusional fool. I can only base things on what I see and what I know. And here's what I know. Every single person I know, middle class person, and even some people that are well off, are struggling, absolutely struggling. And as I said, I got into a thing where I was watching the 1920 stock market crash, and then the Great Depression. And there was a compendium of things. Well, that's a big word, isn't it, for an Aussie? Compendium. There was a lot of things that happened that brought it all to the forefront as well. And it was like looking in a mirror between then and now. It was extremely, extremely crazy how close everything was. The term "roaring 20s," you know, all the flip flappers or whatever they call them, flip flappers, and everybody else. It was bloody interesting to watch because there was just this, sheeple. They were just sheeple. And I tell you what was really interesting, and the comparisons between then and now, was how unscrupulous the US government was, and how people just, they just said to everyone, it didn't matter who you were, just go and get a loan and get some stocks and buy some stocks so you can actually make loads of money. And, and just how gullible and naive people were. They believed everything their government said to them. Just crazy shit. And of course, people bought everything. They literally threw everything at it, including the kitchen sink. And then some. One of the most interesting things that I didn't know was on that day was Winston Churchill was actually in New York on the day of the big crash and lost almost his entire personal fortune. And his overriding quote for the day was he was surprised at how calm and efficient everything was in the stock market on that day, on the floor. And I was like, but like I said, it took a month, basically a month, for it all to really crash. Went down, went up a little bit, went down, did a sawtooth, and then it just went, fell through the floor. At the same time, there was a massive drought in America, which a lot of people forget, and was actually one of the biggest things that caused the stock market crash. There was just no goods, no produce. It was just that bad. Like you're talking about a dust bowl in the top of the country, or most of the country was just a dust bowl. It was appalling, absolutely appalling. And as I've said before, men who were working on the farms left the farms at that particular time after the stock market crash, went into the cities trying to get work, etc. Now remember, there's no phones, there's no transport, there's no nothing. So they've left their family there and they've gone into the city. A lot of those families starved to death. You can read up on this stuff. It's incredible history. They literally starved to death because there was no one to provide for them. It's just tragic. And this is in the days of no health care, no unemployment benefits, no nothing. So you either worked, found a menial job, or you didn't. And you died. Yeah, pretty tragic. I could recommend for people to go and watch it and, watch the Great Depression and the some of the documentaries that were done on it. It's just mind-blowing. And it pays to watch those sort of things because then you know what's coming. Be under no illusion about what's coming. You go from the highs to the lows. Very bad lows. Okay. There is a current meme, as predicted by Q, as regards to cyber attacks. This is being done to stop anybody really, looking into the real facts of this. Now, the real facts are this. Alexander Downer was working for MI5, MI6, and basically with the help of the Australian, New Zealand and the Canadian governments, set up to do this whole Russia collusion story. Sorry, they didn't set it up. The Americans set it up. Everybody else was involved. Not so sure about the Canadians at the moment, but I know that I do know that the Australian and the New Zealanders were up to their necks in it. So, and as I said before, there's no way that Alexander Downer, one of Australia's top diplomats, if not the top diplomat, would have done this without the authority and the knowledge of the Australian government at that time, which was Malcolm Turnbull. Someone wrote in and said, "You don't understand what the word treason means," on one of the comments when I did the Aussie treason video. My point being, Alexander Downer was working as a spy for MI5, MI6, i.e. UK government, with full knowledge of the Australian government and the UK government. Theresa May was in charge of the security services at that time in the UK government as Home Defence Minister. What is it called? Home Affairs Minister or something like that. Australia, UK, New Zealand were colluding with the Americans, FBI, CIA, NSA, James Clapper, James Comey, whomever. They had to have that meeting. They had to have that barroom thing with George Papadopoulos to give an excuse to give the information to the UK government via New Zealand. Do you understand all this? It's pathetic. And it's true, sadly. So, how does Alexander Downer get off scot-free? How does Malcolm Turnbull get off scot-free? And now, the third person involved in this at a very high level is a guy called George Brandis, who who took Alexander Downer's place as the British High Commissioner in London. Because at that time, Alexander Downer was Australia's representative as the UK High Commissioner for Australia High Commission. Brandis was the Attorney General of Australia under Turnbull. Are you following the dots here, folks? The meeting was set up by the Americans and via Israeli intelligence service with George Papadopoulos. Poor old George Papadopoulos just walked in there not knowing any of this, by the way, and just got he was cannon fodder. The correct protocol was never followed. There was no issuance of any of this stuff to the US government. The US government just did it on their own bat. There was no official, I'm going to say that again, there was no official communique between the Australian government and anybody else as regards to this matter. That's where this is broken down. If you want to follow up on Devin Nunes, he states this time and time again. There was no official communique from the Australian government as regards to this matter within the Five Eyes remit. So Alexander Downer is either A, the world's biggest Class A liar, or B, he was working for the UK government as a spy. Why else would he be there? Why else would Alexander Downer meet George Papadopoulos, who is nothing to Alexander Downer, and then give some crap about we had a big boozy lunch, they had one drink? That's fact. They had a couple of drinks maybe, but they didn't have a boozy session. That was all made up. So now the Australian and UK, Canadian and New Zealand governments are now tear-assing into Russia, telling everyone that, oh, they're attacking our cybersecurity, etc. It's all bullshit. It's all absolute bullshit. And they've also come out and said China, it's Russia and China, by the way, China is putting secondary chips into computers and selling them around the world. And these are in US warships, etc. Guys, look, I'm not even a computer, and I'm not even anywhere near a computer person. Nowhere near it. But even I can tell you that if you've got a secondary computer chip in a computer, somewhere along the line, it has to show up. It's as simple as that. It would be virtually impossible for it to be hidden. You could easily find it. So it's just another make-believe bullshit story. So watch this space, because I fully expect Trump in the next couple of weeks to ask Alexander Downer via subpoena to come to America and explain what the hell happened, if that hasn't already happened. How that's going to affect Australia-US relations is anybody's guess. I had to throw this in because this grub here, look, I can't even imagine what this grub was doing. Maybe he was looking at, nefarious things on the internet. He spent $2,800 of taxpayers' money on internet at his house in 1 month. And his excuse was, oh, I had to use Wi-Fi. Guys, I'm trying to understand this, right? This grub, right, reckons that he spent, most houses now have unlimited internet. And even if you haven't, you've got a mobile, which has got 5 gig or 10 gig or whatever. Man, I couldn't even use all that in a month. What the hell was this bloke doing? Was he having internet parties around at his place or something with 30 people or 100 people chewing up internet? $2,800 he charged Australian taxpayers. And then, I had to do it because of my job. What? $2,800. If this guy's in your area, if this grub, and that's all he is an absolute grub, is your federal MP, I'll be going around and knocking on his door. Not his own personal house door, but his the office where he's based in his constituency. And I'd be saying to him, mate, you are paying this money back. Listen to this. Mr. Robert charged taxpayers more than $11,000 for home data over a 6-month period. The latest parliamentary exposure report show, which is an average of $1,846 a month for internet usage. My family home is located, he tries to justify this, is located a significant distance from the telephone exchange, resulting in poor broadband internet connectivity. Mr. Robert Sanders' statement. Mate, you can live in the back of the friggin' boondocks. You can live in the back of Moree if you want. And that's just, that is just bullshit. There's people out there that can't even afford. There's veterans living on the street, living in cars. There's people living in cars, in cardboard boxes, living in shit squalor on the streets, and this dick shit is actually telling people that he has to spend $11,000 on internet. If you live in his area, if you live in this guy's constituency, get some placards made up and stand outside of his office and tell him he's paying money back. What a grub. This is why people are sick to death of these absolute fucking bozos. Sorry for my French. It's wrong. It's dead set wrong. It's theft. It's absolute theft. Pure and simple theft. Just crazy. Just crazy. Okay, folks, well, this is a very, very worrying situation here in the South China Sea. The Chinese and the Americans almost had a collision in the South China Sea because the Chinese thought it'd be a good idea to try and screw up the US Navy. It says here leaked, but obviously the US government gave this out. This is a really, really worrying development, folks. Now, if you look to the right-hand side here, US warships sail near disputed islands. This was they've been doing this now for nearly a month, and they haven't left. This is the American Navy. And it's getting very fraught, folks. These two boats were 40 meters from each other. 40 meters. Oh, you could shoot each other from that distance easily. US violated basic norms. Now the Chinese are obviously saying that this is their place, blah blah blah. Now I'm going to go through this again with you because this is important. Look down here. This is China up here. This is the Philippines. This is where China is saying that this is theirs down here. This is Vietnam. That's Philippines. This belongs to the Philippines, Malaysia, and Brunei. Now, look, I can't even imagine. This is like the distance from Australia to, I don't know, top end of Indonesia from China. It's that far. Like, there's no disputing that. Now, the Chinese have just come in here and just decided, oh, well, we'll just dredge your shit out of the place and we'll just put a couple of military islands there. Now, one thing that everyone needs to remember, the closest base, there is no, I don't believe the Americans are in Philippines anymore. I think they got kicked out. So there's no military base of the Americans in the Philippines anymore. As far as I remember, there might be a small base, but I think the majority of them got kicked out. So the closest base is for the Americans, maybe Singapore. Even then, it's only a very small one. And Darwin is just down on the other side of all that. Fair way away, but... So, in retrospect, it's very isolated. But it's not isolated to the Chinese. Now, I always said that the whole dynamic will change if the Chinese land long-range bombers on these islands. And that's exactly what did happen. As soon as there's any even sniff of long-range bombers being able to get the Pine Gap, because you may not understand this, but the US is actually digitally blind, hard word to say, without Pine Gap. Because radio waves travel round the world. They don't travel that way. They travel up and down. So the US is literally blind without Pine Gap. That's how important it is to the US. And by proxy Australia and, the Allies, for want of a better term. So you've got to really, think, okay, well, what's really going on here? Now, it ain't going to be long before one of two things happen. Either the US fires on a Chinese ship because they feel in peril, or, and this is a big or, the US flies some bombers to Australia, to Tyndall Air Force Base, and, fly over these islands and just literally lay waste to them. These disputed, but they're not even islands, they're just dredged up bloody things that the Chinese have built. Or the third scenario is that the Americans, with the Philippines and the Vietnamese and Malaysia, mount an offensive to take these islands off the Chinese. But whatever happens, and you all need to understand this, whatever happens, one of those three scenarios is going to happen. Because the world just can't let the Chinese decide that they want to take over the South China Sea. It's just not going to happen. So once all this bullshit is sorted out, and look, I was going to say once all this bullshit in America is sorted out, I was going to say, long range thinking of the Chinese, because they think 100 years time, is that they know the American empire is collapsing. They're probably thinking that it's going to turn in on itself, civil war, they'll be occupied over there, and China takes over the southern hemisphere, more or less. That includes Australia. There's a lot of pain coming. So if you're not aware of all this, and you need to be aware. The one thing that I would say is that the Australian government needs to actually start stepping up, and we Australians need to start asking to get our guns back, because if the Chinese came to Australia right now, what are we going to shoot them with? You may wonder why the Americans decided to put their base in Darwin. Well, there's no two ways about it. They put it there because if the Chinese were going to invade Australia, there's only one way that they're going to do it. They're going to get to Darwin first. To get to Perth or anywhere else is just a huge long trip. They probably wouldn't, by the time they decided to get there, they've got to, they can't support long range fighter. Logistically, it's just a nightmare. From the Spratly Islands to Darwin, yeah, they can supply people. So that's why the Americans put the American base in Darwin. So look, it's getting bad, and it's getting worse by the week. Australia's got a submarine floating around up there that's been there for nearly 3 months now. It hasn't come back. So it's running around up there somewhere with the American submarines that are running around there. And now we've got we've got 2 Australian warships up there, and the Americans have got destroyers, etc., going through there. And can I just say, so have the UK, so have France. So this isn't, it's not going to end well. And as I said before, it's either the Chinese just say, the Americans say to the Chinese, you have to leave, and they go, okay, all right, look, we tried our best, we'll see you later. That ain't going to happen. The Chinese are staying there, no matter what anybody says. So they've been called out by the Americans, and they're not going. So let's see where this all ends, eh? But I don't think it's going to be pretty. All right, folks, let's do the prayers. Okay, verse of the day. Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call on him while he is near. Very good. Okay, 2 things before I say the Lord's Prayer. Someone told me off for an American wrote and said, you cuss and you swear and you do this and you do that and blah, 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 and then you say the Lord's Prayer. You're a hypocrite. Well, can I just say something? And I've said this before, and Americans kind of don't get this about Australians. We swear. We swear at everything. And I mean most Australians. The F word is enshrined in our constitution. I don't say the C word, but the F word, I grew up with it. All the other words, it's just part of our culture, guys. And you need to accept that. If you can't, switch off. Simple as that. Sorry, my station isn't for you. But in actual fact, the F word in the Australian language is actually enshrined. There was many years ago, 20, 30 years ago or something, there was a court case where a woman in a police station took the sergeant to court because he swore at her using the F word. And she went to court and the judge said, you've got to be fucking kidding. That's the truth. You can find it out. And they threw it out of court, and ever since then, the F word is basically, it's not an affronted word in Australia. And there's many other, like wanker, there's all these other words in Australia that we have colloquial meanings for all of these words. And it's a tone of your voice as to whether that's insulting or not. Okay? Even the C word is used amongst mates to call each other things like that. I don't do it, but some of my mates do. It's not offensive here in Australia. We have three tones for all these words that are either g'day, like friendly, sort of having a sarcastic joke, or you're serious and you want to fight. And you need to understand that about Australians. Right, as regards to the Lord's Prayer. To the guy who keeps writing to me, saying to me, please stop using this prayer, blah, blah, it's not the Lord's Prayer. I don't care. It's what I'm saying. Once again, if you don't like it, turn off. Stop writing this comment to me about it's the Mason's prayer or what. I don't give a shit. I'm saying it. If you don't like it, click off. Simple as that. Stop pestering me about it. Please. Okay, let's say the Lord's Prayer. The King James Version. Remembering, King James Version, as far as I know, unless there's an old thing that I don't know of, is the original Lord's Prayer from the King James Bible. Remembering that Henry VIII was the first person in the world to let normal people read the Bible. Did you know that? No one else in the world, the clergy, etc., would not allow normal people to read the Bible. Henry VIII was the first person to do so. You can read up, it's a fact. And the Bible, did you know that in England at that time, there were so many dialects that people could not even talk to each other. Henry VIII produced the Bible in English and spread it amongst the land, thus ensuring everyone spoke English. This is a fact. So this is the one I'm saying. It's what I'm sticking with. The Lord's Prayer. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen. God bless, folks. Prep out.